Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Riverdale as well as the latest episode of Happy. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I talk about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Riverdale, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Happy. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of Riverdale. So a lot of interesting things going down this episode. Obviously, Fizzle Rock is going crazy in the sense of like a lot of people are kind of going all like zombie-ish in the sense of like they're kind of raging out and just losing control. It's more like a that whole zombie thing of like they're not zombies, they're kind of like some rage virus or something like that, like some 28 days later type of situation. So the question is, why is it becoming like that? Is it because it's just kind of like, because Kurtz is the one behind all this, so is he doing this on his own? Is this what the Gargoyle King wants? I guess because it's the kind of just it's like the drug is already spread enough where everyone's kind of getting a little bit of the Fizzle Rock situation. So I guess now it's time you start spiking it and making it so that you really make an impact on this whole game that the Gargoyle King is playing. Or maybe Kurtz is 100% doing that on his own. It's hard to say. I highly doubt it, just because Kurtz is so caught up in this game that I think he's not making any move without the Gargoyle King say so. But that does beg the question, why? What is he cutting it with then, if that is the case? Like, it isn't just Fizzle Rock, which is interesting because let's not forget this whole Fizzle Rock thing was kind of on Gladys. So she came here with her own intentions and it's grown much bigger than her. It just happens to be like a situation of beyond what I think she probably thought it would be. She probably thought it'd be a lot simple, just kind of bring in the gargoyles, do this, kind of sweep in and run the drug game. But I think she underestimated this whole gargoyle situation. Now unless we end up finding out that she was the Gargoyle King, or rather queen, the entire time. Maybe not. I feel like it's not her. But then again, the whole situation of Jelly Bean getting involved makes me think maybe that is the case. I feel like she wouldn't put her own daughter in danger like that, because it seems like who's ever behind all this has a personal vendetta against Jughead, which would make perfect sense if it was Gladys behind all this, because this would be her trying to teach Jughead a lesson. Because the whole point of like everything that happened with Kurtz, it's like, oh, baby teeth, that was just like the opening act. The fact of the matter is the real quest is the princess. It was all, the real quest is for him and Jughead and his family. So maybe that's the whole point. Maybe, Gladys set this whole situation up. Maybe, Jelly Bean thinks that, oh, like her and her mom are on the same wavelength. And it turns out, wait, mom, you used me type of thing. That's me just throwing it out there. It might totally not be the case at all. Maybe, in fact, this whole situation might change Gladys's mind about going forward and everything. Because it's like, oh, her baby girl got mixed up in all of this. Like, it's like, okay, because, like I said, because Gladys seems like she's so in control and everything. And seeing control potentially slip through her fingers like that, especially because she made such a point of like, oh, Jelly Bean gets so, she wanted Jelly Bean to wrap her, FP around her fingers. So it kind of seems like it might be a little counterintuitive, or maybe, like I said, it might just be part of the plan to kind of draw him in and stuff like that. I don't know. We'll have to see, because now the Gargoyle King has really, really stepped up. The whole situation with baby teeth, like he ended up dying apparently because his teeth being ripped out led to him bleeding to death. And so that's a very brutal act. Even compared to all the other sacrifices and deaths, they've never been that brutal before. So you can make the argument, if it was Gladys, it would make sense, because, Jughead and everyone associated with him caused all of this, So, I don't know. Like I said, in my head it's Gladys, but maybe it's not the case. We'll ultimately have to wait and see, though. Because I knew something definitely was up when it's like, oh, you have Jelly Bean playing G&G with Joaquin's little brother. They even said his name at the beginning of the episode, but I kind of let it slip my mind. But yeah, so his whole thing of going after Archie to get the gargoyles to look after him, now he found another way to do it. He found another quest that would allow him that opportunity, so he kind of got what he wanted in the end. It never crossed my mind to think that, it would lead to a situation like this. So obviously, like I said, we've got a couple cases of the whole Fizzle Rock situation in this episode, but obviously it's going to start probably picking up and spreading like wildfire, or maybe that's all part of the plan. I don't know. All the while this is happening, Veronica is backing up Archie and the El Royale fighters because they want to get into this gilded gauntlet thing or boxing thing that Elio has set up, because Mad Dog wants to fight for Baby Teeth, and they all kind of want to do this. And I love Veronica going to Elio and it's like, yo, Archie almost beat your fighter last time, but Elio didn't want to listen. She's like, okay, remember, I tried to keep this civil, so I challenged him on television and everything. What's interesting, though, too, is that she ended up giving Archie, like, a new robe and boxers. I even love Fred being like, flying a little close to son, aren't you? And he's like, what? No, me and Veronica are friends. He's like, sure, friends. Because even Josie was like, wait, where'd he get that stuff from? It's like, oh, yeah, he's sponsored by Pop. See, got a new robe and a new boxers. How do you like it? I'm like, right there, you're like, yeah, that's going to get complicated already. Love triangle situations is going to come about because, obviously, in that moment, you can tell Veronica and Archie definitely aren't over each other. I mean, they've been together for a very long time, so obviously that love doesn't just fade away because that breakup is still fairly new, so it's probably going to cause some complications, which is like, me and how I've talked about it before, me and my relationships, like when it's like two characters that typically get together first, it's kind of like, well, those are typically people you'd want to kind of be together because Archie and Veronica have just kind of always been this whirlwind romance, so you kind of lean towards that, but you're like, nah, him and Josie are so good together too. Like I said, I just lean more towards the Veronica and Archie thing, but I just know it's going to end in heartbreak, and I hope it doesn't end up like that, but it probably will. It was interesting because Mad Dog was trying to warn Archie. He's like, yo, that dude you're fighting, he's on something. All I saw him was filled with rage, and so he tried to get Archie to take some drugs. Like, I don't know if that was necessarily Fizzle Rock he was trying to give him. It might have been just something else. It looked like it was Fizzle Rock, which is a good thing Archie didn't take it. Probably because Archie knows about everything that's going down, so it's like, no way am I taking that. The guy he ends up fighting ends up taking it, though. Things get pretty rough for Archie, and even to the point, like, you see Fred in the stands and be like, shit. Kind of, obviously seeing his son fight like that. But luckily, Archie was able to bring him down easily because Elio doesn't want to listen. He's like, oh, if Archie wants to give up, it's going to be a loss. So do you want that loss or not? But Archie gets in there and lays him out. But because of, I guess, the combination of, obviously, the Fizzle Rock having its effects on his body and also Archie knocking him out like that, it causes some issues, which Elio's going to be responsible for because he's the one that gave him the drugs and everything. But then there might be a situation where it shouldn't splash back on Archie for any reason, not unless we end up finding out that he did actually take the drugs that, Mad Dog gave him. I don't think he did because I believe the drugs he gave him were Fizzle Rock, so I hope that's not the case. It's just kind of interesting because obviously Mad Dog's looking out for Archie, but part of me was like, the fact is he offered you that, like, that could be him just being like, oh, I'm trying to look out for my bro, but I don't know. That looks a little shady, but I'll chalk it out to just him being like, no, like, that guy's, got the upper hand. I want to make sure you got the upper hand. I do like that Archie had to kind of gain a little weight to kind of be in the same weight class, and Veronica brought out all those burgers and fries. He's like, dude, I'm turning into Jughead with all these damn burgers. She's like, that's the point. I love it. I am curious to see ultimately what the outcome of that whole situation is going to be. Like I said, I think things are not going to look good for Elio. Probably look a little more beneficial and positive towards Veronica and everything, but we'll see. But another angle to this is Betty. Because obviously we see, Cheryl's a part of the farm and everything. And so, obviously that turns into some complications because you have Evelyn step into Tony and be like, I won't let you get in Cheryl's way. She's like, Cheryl loves me like I love her. So whatever your situation, it's not going to stop what's between us. It's just crazy that Evelyn is just stepping to Tony. It's Tony stepped right back like, yo, this is between me and my girlfriend. Because she was like, the fact of the matter is we're able to give her something that you can't even imagine. We're able to fulfill her in a way that you can never imagine. And Tony was like, I highly doubt that. It's like, yo! Okay, so Tony's got it like that type of situation. I love it. So you even see her kind of doing that, being like, oh, I want your mind, body, and soul, but more so your body. Like, forget that whole farm thing you're going to do, come to bed with me type of situation. All the while you have Betty, you know, trying to convince her mom, even trying to convince Cheryl, because she ended up giving Tony like the video where it shows like, oh, Cheryl's dad killing Jason, but it wasn't enough to, like, she is legitimately hypnotized. She's like, no, silly, this tape is obviously fabricated. You've seen this tape long before, you know, he showed up. Before Edgar pop up in your life, and it's just kind of like and you know, it's like, oh, so Jason's been alive this entire time. Like, she doesn't even think about the fact is, obviously you love Jason so much. If that is really Jason, why hasn't he come to you before now if he was still alive? I'm surprised that hasn't been something kind of thrown in her face, but obviously they're hypnotized. They're so consumed with grief, and Edgar's using that against them. He's doing the same thing with Alice. It actually took Betty actually going to her dad to kind of get the idea of like, why don't you fake a tombstone to make it so that it's like, oh, Charles is dead, so she has no choice but to accept it. I mean, we don't know what really actually happened to Charles. Obviously, we know about Chick last season, but it's like, we don't know actually about her brother, because it's like after he turned 18, the Sisters of Quiet Mercy just, you know, he got kicked out of the system. So she tried to track him down, but no luck. So she tried to convince her mom, but her mom kind of saw through it. And so Betty did the logical thing. She chloroformed her mom and basically kidnapped her, which is a twisted situation. I thought that situation was going to end up a little more messed up than it did. I thought Alice was going to get free and then she was going to call the cops on her own daughter situation, like, oh, arrest her for kidnapping. I thought that's what we were going down. Fortunately, it never got to that, but for Betty, she tried to convince her mom. It's like, and I like what she was saying, basically, like, you can't throw away your past. Yes, I know there's a lot of terrible stuff that happens, but it also came with some good stuff. Yeah, everything with Dad and the house and everything, sure, like, you want to get rid of the house because it's a reminder of Dad, the life that you had built together, and he ends up being this murderer. But the fact of the matter is, good came from it, too. You, me, and Polly, like, you had me and Polly, so there is good. If you throw away the bad of the past, you'll get rid of the good times, too. But for Alice, you know, there's so much pain, she doesn't want to even acknowledge all that. She wants to burn away her past. When Betty was away, she ended up burning all those photos from their, you know, that photo album where it's like, you know, trying to take her down a trip down memory lane. It's like, I love you, Betty, but you gotta let me go. But obviously Betty's not going to, because like, you're her mom, she loves you, and she doesn't want you in a situation that will, you know, because she doesn't want you taken advantage of, like someone using your grief against you like that. I even love Evelyn being like, where's your mom at? And she's like, I don't know. And then Evelyn had to open her mouth and be like, you didn't know we have other copies. Yo, Betty snapped. She was like, yo, let me set the record straight. Don't come near me, my friends, or my mom or my family again. Better yet, if you do, I will kill you. Ask around if you don't believe it. It's like, yo, Betty going hard like that, dude, is insane. And I love that even, like, you can tell Evelyn got shook. She's like scared, you know. It's like, yo, don't get it twisted. Like, you haven't seen it in a while, but let's not forget Betty does in fact have a dark side. We haven't seen Dark Betty for a while, but that doesn't mean she still isn't there, which that in itself plays an interesting role in something, because listening to her mom's recordings, she hears that her mom kind of looks at her. It's like, oh, sometimes I'm scared of Betty, like, because I see the darkness, same darkness that's in how I see it in her, which is super messed up, because obviously it's not meant to be something that Betty was meant to hear, but still kind of messed up. It's like, oh, that serial killer, yeah, I see that same darkness in my own daughter, and it scares me, which is sad. You know, Betty's like, oh, like, you manipulate my mom to say that, but she's like, but, you know, Edgar's like, nah, that was 100% your mom. So, which is sad, you know? And then I think, you know, you can also make the argument, because of everything that went down, like, the life she had built basically came crumbling down. The man that she had married and loved turns out to be a serial killer. So obviously you're going to look at your daughter, who is part him. You know, you're going to look at her, you know, it's your way of kind of dealing with everything. You're going to look at her in a certain way of being like, oh, she's got that same look about her because she's half her dad. So obviously what's there in her dad, maybe there's some of it in her, which obviously she sees bits and pieces of it over the course of the series, that dark side of her. So it's just sad that Betty had to hear that. But later on, the different recording was basically like, oh, Alice being like, the fact is that Hal did more damage to Betty than she realized. Like, he did a lot of damage to all of us. So it doesn't seem like she's just necessarily isolating Betty. It seems like she's kind of saying all of them have kind of been changed because of Hal. But it just, that particular recording, she really kind of was like, I'm scared of Betty, which is sad. because obviously everything Betty's doing, she wants to save her mom, because it's like, oh, all the stuff you're helping my mom with, she could have gotten that help in therapy without handing over my college tuition and selling our house. But for Edgar, it's like, at the end of the day, your mom's getting help. Whether this whole Charles situation is real or not, or an illusion, the fact of the matter is, it's a wound for your mom, and she's slowly getting healed, and she's getting better. Why is that such an issue if this is helping? And it kind of made Betty take a step back, because it's like, she might not agree with the farm and stuff like that, but if they are helping her mom, who is she to stand in the way of it, especially because her mom does definitely need it, you know? And so she ends up returning her to Evelyn and the farm, and then Evelyn puts Tony in the situation because, like, Cheryl's like, yeah, I have to choose between you and Jason. And it's like, I love you, but I've loved Jason forever, so I have to choose my brother. And then, you know, Tony's like, well, there has to be a way you can have both, so Tony has to join as well. But it turns out Tony is a plant that, you know, Betty sent there. But to be fair, she sent Cheryl in, and Cheryl came out a full-blown member. But I think another thing to kind of consider is Tony's doing this for love, so that's probably going to keep her motivated no matter what happens, no matter what she sees. She knows she's doing this for Cheryl, the person she loves, but we'll see if that won't kind of get changed. You know, that she won't get sucked up in it anyway, because they might end up showing her something that she might want to, or rather see someone that she wants to see. I mean, interestingly enough, even Edgar admits this isn't for Betty, because Betty sees through his BS anyway, but it still brings up the conversation of, well, how are they able to see Jason and Charles in Alice's case? Maybe it's a situation of, maybe it has something to do with the Fizzle Rock or something like that. Like, obviously it's probably like hypnotism, because that's what it seems like this is all about. Like, he's probably some mentalist. He's probably very good at getting inside of people's minds. It seems like that is the case. Because he talked a little bit about his background of like, oh, I was a different person in the past. I walked into a desert to die, came across a farm, the lady there put him to work and stuff like that, which makes you wonder, is that the truth? Also, I'm curious about this lady who put him on this path and stuff like that. Maybe that's something Betty will end up investigating later on. What's also sad, too, is that Betty had to ask the question of like, I'm not a monster, am I? And Tony's like, no, you're just a daughter who wants her mom back, just like I want my girlfriend back, you know? So that was just kind of it's sad that even Betty had to even ask that. So she does get her dad to sign the divorce papers, because it's like, no matter what it takes, as long as mom is getting healed, I have to let her go and let her get healed, no matter, even if I don't agree with the way she's going about it. It is helping, and she needs the help. But then Hal's like, yeah, but the fact is, I want you to do a favor for me. I want to come back home. Which is, I don't know how you want Betty to kind of swing that, but okay. Which, you can make the argument Alice not being there is putting Betty in a position where it's like that darkness in her is growing, that she's reaching out to the only other family she has left. She doesn't have Polly, she doesn't have Alice. She has Jughead, sure, but it won't make up for the fact is that her family's kind of in the turmoil that is. So her dad reaching out like that, especially because he's been that shoulder she could rely on, of course she's going to be more tempted to listen to what he has to say. So we'll ultimately have to wait and see where that all takes us. But I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Happy. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode. First and foremost, we learned a lot about Sunny Shine in a certain regard in this episode. Obviously, we learned a little bit more about how he actually got his start. We got a little hint to it last season, but now we kind of get a bigger picture in the sense of it started with him stealing a show from Dayglow Doug, which interestingly enough is the actor who played Metatron in Supernatural. He's been in other things too, but that's like the most recent thing I can place him in, at least that I'm... No, didn't he pop up in Frequency, the TV show? It was short-lived. I feel like he did, but maybe that's my imagination. I feel like that's the case, but nevertheless, it's interesting, and it's because it turns out obviously Dayglow Doug is the one that has his connections to like he's super into like World War II, and obviously Sunny Shine kept referencing that, like obviously in front of the kids and stuff like that, kind of basically blackmailing him. And this is how Sunny Shine got his start, was by taking Dayglow Doug's show, even to the point he's like, oh, you could guest star up here, but obviously, you know that whole episode you did about ripping off the Band-Aid, kind of basically saying like, oh, this is a rip the Band-Aid off completely type of situation of, this is my show now, not yours, time to say goodbye situation. Even being like, oh, how tall you think so-and-so was, and he kind of makes a motion like a Hail Hitler type of motion. It's like, oh, about this high, and it's like, oh boy. So part of me was wondering whether that was like real and straight up, like, oh, he's into that, but stuff later on, the way he kind of talks about it, it seems like he's not really into that. It seems like it's just that Sunnyshine took advantage of him, like obviously his like, oh, love of World War II or whatever, and he kind of used it and made it paint him like he was like a Nazi believer and supporter and stuff like that, when in actuality he isn't. He took his hobby and turned it into something bad. Meredith and Nick end up tracking him down at like this home or whatever, and are asking him questions about Sunnyshine. Obviously Nick's not really listening to him too much. And, you know, even walking around the old folks home. And I even love Happy being... Well, because, like, I love that he tells a joke or something basically about a pig and a bird. And he's like, oh, I won't sleep with you. And I won't sleep with a pig like you. And the bird's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm not talking to you or something. I won't sleep with the bird. He tells the pig, I'm not sleeping with the bird. He's like, I'm not a pig, I'm a bird. He's like, I wasn't talking to you or something like that. And everyone's laughing. Even Nick's laughing, haha. And it happens like, ha 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 ha. I actually don't get it. And I love later on too when it's like looking at the old folks home and he's just happy. He's like, dude, why do they not tell you about this? It's like the Golden Girls never brought this whole situation up of just like, you know, a retirement home and stuff like that, of just like how sad everything is. And then, you know, Nick is kind of like, yeah, that's kind of what they don't share that aspect of it. And then lo and behold, it takes a hard turn when it's like, wait, this guy might be a Nazi. Then Nick and Happy look everywhere else, and it's like this place is riddled with nothing but Nazis. And to basically get their way out of there, you have Meredith and Nick killing their way through people. At one point, Nick breaks a dude's arm and he's laughing and waving the dude's broken arm, being like, hey Meredith, look, they're so brittle. And she's crushing a dude's neck and she hears it snapping. She's almost kind of disgusted by it. She's shooting some people. Obviously, she's trying to protect Doug. And even at one point, she's telling Nick, she's like, stop killing people. And Nick is like, come on, it's okay. They're Nazis. And even I'm like, that's the fucked up nature of this situation. Some of these people are old people, but they're Nazis. So it comes to that thing that came up in Santa Clarita Diet. It's like, is it messed up? Because obviously this situation is being kind of different, but it's like, it's kind of in Santa Clarita Diet. It was like a whole, like, oh, this person's disabled, but he's a Nazi. So what about this situation? These are elderly people they're killing, but they're Nazi elder people. So, you know, so that's the complicated nature of it. And I love that when it's all said and done, literally everyone there is dead. Because literally everyone there was a Nazi. Apparently, like, Sunnyshine had put, you know, Doug there and made it so that he couldn't escape, because it was kind of to keep up the whole appearance of like, oh yeah, like I'm a terrible person. He's like, why do you think I've been kind of trying to tell all these crappy jokes all the time? Because I'm trying to get out of here as much as I can. I even love it that he was like, oh yeah, my assistant can't help me because she ended up dying this morning, but I'm a dude, honorable thing. Dude, you know, she died the way that she loved. And one of the dudes in the audience is like, by showing off her box for a nickel? I'm like, Jesus! I cannot believe these are lines in a TV show. That's crazy. In particular, a TV show on Sci-Fi. This show pushes boundaries that still kind of shock me even at this point. But holy crap. Also, things got super bloody. There was even that last Nazi he ends up stabbing and kind of like gutting a little bit. And that guy's like, father didn't love me or something like that. You might have Nick being like, ew, don't come to me with all your emotional shit. Just die or something, you know? Things got crazy. Hell, even Meredith took off a dude's prosthetic leg and smacked him in the face, and his dentures came flying out of his mouth. It's like some hardcore shit that went down. So there's that. We do learn that Sunnyshine, it seems like Sunnyshine might have made a deal with monsters or devils. Like, we know that they exist in this world and stuff like that, because it turns out the things that it was a little bit of a thing that came up last season, but it was never fully explored. The things that Meredith ended up shooting one of them last season, because she even points it out to Doug, being like, I shot one of those things and I came back later on and the body was gone. The fact is, that was something that was never covered. It was just kind of like, oh, she killed it, and we just kind of left it at that. You could tell it wasn't human, but nothing else was brought up about it. And And now we're kind of getting like a continuation of that, because it turns out these wishies are something else. Apparently they don't talk verbally, they telepathically communicate, and the only person who can understand them is Sunnyshine. Because even, you know, Doug is like, the fact of the matter is Sunnyshine didn't want to grow up, and he was just some essentially just some random dude that didn't want to grow up and stuff like that. He wasn't a threat, and then out of nowhere he was able to get everything that he wanted, can steal whatever he wanted. So I'm thinking that the wishies are demons or something like that he made a deal with. Maybe they're on the same level as kind of like imaginary friends like Happy maybe, but it seems like more so like outright like some demon type of stuff, especially later on when Nick ends up eating the blood that Meredith had stashed away because he thought it was jelly, because it was in a jelly jar, and it proceeded to explode out of Nick's ass, and it proceeded to attack him. That was interesting, and it fucked Nick up hard too. I love that he's kind of dealing with it alone, because Happy was trying to give him some alone time when he was exploding his guts into the toilet. So that's interesting. It also seems like there's not just one. It seems like there's multiple of them. At least it seems like the one that Meredith shot last episode, it looks like it is dying, or at least it's badly injured. I'm wondering if that piece of it that Nick shed out this episode, the one that was in the jelly jar, if it got back to the original Wishy, would it be okay? Because it seems obviously like cold temperatures keep them stable. Because it seems like he keeps them all stashed there, because I guess like warm temperature kind of makes them go a little haywire or whatever. But what was interesting is it doesn't seem like it's just two that he has, because we saw at least two last season, but there was at least like a group of them kind of gathered around the one that was dying, you know, near the end of the episode. So it seems like there's definitely more than one. There's actually a handful. So that was interesting. Obviously, Meredith is kind of starting to think and realize, like, yeah, something definitely is up because of that whole situation, because that thing isn't natural, which is interesting considering the fact is that, you know, you have Nick being so skeptical about it. This literally coming from the guy that's talking to an imaginary friend. It's like, you're having a... But, you know, Nick is Nick, so we'll just kind of leave it at that. What's interesting, too, is Sunny Shine was getting his dick remodeled for his statue, so he's literally standing there naked as he's talking to those two corrupt cops. I even love randomly in their conversation, it's like, he's like, do you understand me? They're like, yeah, it's as clear as Mother Teresa's, you know, drug test. And then the other cop was like, oh, I wouldn't bet on that, and kind of hints that, oh, Mother Teresa wasn't clean. It's like, what the fuck? Okay. They have no idea who it is that attacked his place, because Sunnyshine cleaned the place up. It's like, oh yeah, got rid of the bodies and everything, because he doesn't want anything official tied to all of this. So he wants them to unofficially, but officially yet unofficial, find out who's behind all this, because it's like the only witness left alive and during all this is BB, but she tells about it was sticking her finger up the pool boy, and that the only person was him and, you know, Happy, and obviously everyone thinks she's crazy, so it's like, let's not listen to what she says. I love later on when they show up there, though, the corrupt cops, and they find that ID. Luckily for Saz, it's not his real ID, it's the fake ID he's been using for like the taxi cab and stuff that he's doing, which is like, in the end, that might benefit him, because they'll be going after the wrong dude, because it's like, oh, we got to go after this guy. And it probably is a real person, too. It's probably not just some BS that Nick made up of, like, oh, he took someone's random identity. And, like, oh, that person's not in the same area or whatever. Like, maybe it's that thing of, like, oh, hopefully that person's halfway around the world. It's most likely they live in the same city. So, obviously, the cops are going to track him down and probably beat the crap out of him and be like, oh, yeah, this is the guy that's behind all of it. He might even be the one that ends up pointing them Nick's way. It's like, yeah, this guy took my identity or whatever, potentially. So, we'll see. There's that side of things. And then there's everything with Blue. Blue obviously struggling with his identity in this episode. In that regard of like, he's losing his mind a little bit, because obviously Okis is taking more and more control. Obviously there's a whole demigod thing of like, oh yeah, there's kind of a situation, obviously the bloodline thing, so I can't just leave you. I do love that he was basically like, I would have loved to have been in your sister, just because obviously the whole TV show thing too would have been pretty cool, but now I'm kind of stuck inside of you. For him, it's like, oh, the reason why he wants to stay in prison is because he's biding his time, because the stronger he gets, the more of his strength he gathers up, the more and more control he'll have over Blue, and Blue will start having more and more frequent blackouts until he completely and utterly takes control of Blue's body. But it also seems like he wants to stay in prison because he wants to amass an army. For what purpose? I don't know. I guess like some death and destruction and carnage and chaos type of thing. I don't know whether he plans on just having an army of just people under his control, or is it an army of like, oh, you're going to make them into monsters and demons type of thing. We'll see. It's probably just an army, but I could be wrong about that. So we'll have to wait and see. But what's interesting, obviously, I don't think I brought this up in the premiere about like how Blue's cellmate is played by The Big Show, so that was interesting. Not really that familiar with wrestling, but I've picked up some names here and there over the course. But nevertheless, obviously he's kind of snapping at his cellmate. He's like, you've been nothing but kind to me. And then at one moment, it seemed like he was lowering, Blue's head. I was like, wait, is he planning to? Until Otis stepped in, and it's like, oh, so that's what you were after. It's like, oh, wow. So he was being kind to you just because it's like, no. Yeah, be apologetic while you do your thing on me. That was interesting. But Otis wasn't down for that. And then proceeds to meet with other people. It's like, oh yeah, you sent your people to kill me. It seems Otis has the power to basically make you do whatever I don't know whether it's just he can make you do it without really saying it. I mean, obviously he's quoting like the Bible and stuff like that and making the dude do it. Starting off by cutting off his hand, slicing at his junk with the butcher hatchet or knife, and then also cutting out his own eye, which all that was pretty damn gnarly. But it's like... I'm not sure whether that's just him outright being able to do that without saying anything, or does he have to do something? Does he have to say it for you to do it? Like, is it a thing of like, can he just mind control you, or does he warp reality by speaking? Is that the type of thing? It could be either or. That's kind of well, maybe not outright warp reality, but he makes things come true by speaking them. So that's interesting. Like I said, the thing is obviously biding its time until it gets complete and under control of Blue, and it's going to turn into a whole thing of like, obviously it's building up its army, but what it does beyond that, whether it's just going to be like once I get out of here, I'm going to cause mass destruction and chaos. I mean, it's a demigod and stuff like that, but then remember what Mikey said last episode about devils and stuff like that. So, I mean, it is like a demigod of death or something like that. So I'd assume death and destruction is kind of right up its alley, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see. Then on another side of things, there's everything with Haley and Smoothie, which is kind of interesting because that girl, I guess she was like spitting out like marshmallows and putting them in a large wad and throwing them at Haley, and Smoothie protects her. I guess that girl might be retaliating for the girl that potentially got either hurt or straight up killed last episode. I assume the latter, but maybe it's the former. We haven't seen, but maybe that's why Haley's getting bullied, or just maybe it's just because it's Haley and they just want to, kids being assholes, just doing asshole things. But Smoothie is protecting her, and she has an interesting conversation. He has an interesting conversation with her. Like, obviously some of it is bullshit, because obviously he's trying to make it seem like, oh, I know what you're going through. You were being bullied. I was bullied. Like, I was so happy when the cops found you kids last time. Like, I was forced in the situation I was in. The fact of the matter is, I was being bullied too. Obviously, we know Smoothie is kind of the higher professional that he is. The fact of the matter is, he did what he did. Yes, he was ordered to, but that's because, he also enjoys what he does. So it's like, oh, you give me an order to do something, I'm going to do it. But he also gave some BS response of being like, oh yeah, that's why my eye is like this, because my employers weren't happy about the fact that you got away, but I was. We know his eye is like that because Meredith shot it, but the question is it just straight up like it recovering from being shot? Or was it a situation of maybe it has something to do with Sunshine, maybe he brought Smoothie back to life and, that eye is kind of a representation of that. Maybe he did something with the wishes, maybe Smoothie just got it straight up reconstructed, or maybe it's a situation of he himself made a deal with the monster devil or something. We'll kind of have to wait and see on that regard. But he did bring up some stuff that made it seem like maybe there is some truth to where he's going about this whole situation. Because obviously he's trying to tell Haley, like, oh yeah, your parents lied to you. It's like, oh yeah, your dad basically lied to your mom and then up and left her, and then your mom lied to your dad about you, just kind of saying like, oh, how twisted and messed up her family life is, even saying like, obviously your family is lying to you about a lot of stuff. He's like, I'm going to tell you the truth. Now, once again, what he's getting out of this, obviously he's befriending Haley, and I guess it's supposed to cause a rift between her and her family, because obviously there's already a lot of bad blood there, which is sad, especially because Nick made that whole point of like, he's not trying to get caught up in all this stuff. It's like him and Happy already got enough craziness in their life, and the fact of the matter is he just wants to look out for Haley. Like, she's the most important thing, and it's just kind of sad that that all happens while simultaneously this whole situation with Smoothie and Haley. Once again, I don't know why. Maybe once again, I'm still chalking it up to his ultimate revenge against Nick and Amanda is just to torture them like this by turning their daughter against them and kind of molding her into kind of his young Padawan or something like that, in a sense. Maybe that's what he's going for, or maybe he is actually just lonely and he wants a friend and he figures this is the best way, you know, to do this, because this isn't something he's doing for Sunny Shine. This is like all on his own personal time. So is it about revenge? Is it not? He made it seem like he doesn't care about revenge. I feel like if he did, there'd be a more direct way to go about going after Nick, but maybe this is, like I said, his way of getting back at him by turning his own daughter against using her as a means to get to him, potentially. We'll see. But, you know, maybe in a twisted way, he feels like Haley is the only person that can really understand him and befriend him type of situation. So I wonder how much of the truth is he actually going to try and tell her. I'm sure more and more of the truth will end up breaking things up, especially for Haley, because it's like, oh yeah, she found out her mom got fired, but it's like her mom hadn't told her that. She had to go find out from the doctor, the place that she works, and like, oh, her boss being like, oh yeah, your mom doesn't work here anymore, and she didn't tell Haley. And we also know that Amanda was off with Simon, and you know that led to that whole situation, them banging in a public bathroom. So that's probably another thing that Amanda's going to be lying about. Obviously, Haley, you know, isn't going to tell her mom, because initially she was going to bring up the whole Smoothie situation, but now she sees her mom's a liar. Obviously, her dad's a liar, so she's not going to trust them. She's going to trust the one person who's looked out for her this entire time and continues to look after her, and that's Smoothie, and believing that, hey, maybe he is a friend. Like I said, we'll have to wait and see what his true motives are. I'm very interested to see, obviously, where Nick's situation with that goo monster thing, how that situation plays out. Because he tried flushing it, that didn't work. So things are probably about to get ugly in that bathroom. Well, even uglier. And obviously everything with Sunny Shine and these wishies, like what they really are. Like, are they a thing of like they are kind of, when he says that they're wishes, that they kind of grant you wishes and stuff like that. Obviously he's doing it for the kids show and stuff like that. But maybe it's also because legitimately he is, I mean, those things legitimately can grant wishes and stuff like that, which would also make sense because that's what he does. He grants people's wishes that they can't normally get. In particular, that network owner that he met with last episode, it turns out the thing that he wants that you normally can't ask for apparently is cannibalism. It seemed like he was eating a person, so okay. So I'm sure that the wishes kind of make people's dreams come true. Maybe that's what they feed off of too, by making people's wishes come true. In particular, that's why they have the connection they do with Sunny. Like, the more of his happiness and wishes and dreams come true, the more powerful they get, the more they get fed. Maybe they get fed off every individual dream and wish they make come true. Who knows? More stuff, we'll have to wait and see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.